So that was our debut of a second video today, done by our Jesse Rees here. He's a multimedia specialist.
We do have the landscape manager from Indian Ridge here, and he's happy to get up and talk.
Oh, okay. So we have the landscape manager from Indian Ridge here, and if the manager would like to come up and talk about some of the successes for Indian Ridge, that would be more than welcomed. And his name is Stephen Doyen. Please welcome him.
I came here with the intention of watching our representative speak about this, and at the last minute he had an emergency call and he had to leave. But I'm actually the landscape chairman for Indian Ridge's program, and about 5 years ago we made a determination to start removing turf throughout the area, and we also had landscaping that was 25 years old, and we were looking to do some upgrades. And it turned out to be a pretty big project. We're still very much involved. And I'll give you a few guidelines that might help and things that we went through. When I first came on the committee 5 years ago and I suggested we could start to trim down some of the grass areas, it wasn't a real popular concept, okay? It wasn't so much the cost as that members of the committee itself loved grass. And even though we have two magnificent golf courses that are full of nice grass, they wanted it everywhere else as well. And the first thing I had to do was come up with a strategy to get them to start to evolve into that, to get a little momentum to remove some of this grass. So we first took a look at wherever there was a Edison box or a backflow preventer or an electrician box or anything around the property, and we had grass running right up to those as well. So as we were renovating an area, I'd say, let's kind of build this little area around here and put some natural landscaping materials, some low growing shrubs, and make it easier for the maintenance people to come in and work on those. It's easier for the guys that are mowing. They don't have to edge around all those things. And they're damaging some of these things as well at times when they're up there with their mowers. So they reluctantly gave me that flexibility, and then we started to expand that. And then when we take over another area, let's say it was the size of this wall here that was full of grass, I talked to them about, let's kind of cut it right here instead of going all the way to the end. Let's take out a few hundred square feet here and a few hundred square feet there. We kept talking about the $3 rebate and how that would help pay for sometimes half of the cost of these programs. And little by little, we started cutting back grass every time we did any sort of landscaping. Some other things that we did at the same time was I made sure we put in new irrigation pipes, and they're absolutely right. You can't take your old lines where there's grass. You need to move to, we don't call it per plant irrigation. It's drip irrigation. We call it per plant irrigation, which is a much better term, by the way, than drip, because sometimes we're using micro misters. Some trees we're using buried bubblers in a sheath, a protected sheath. So per plant irrigation is the term we like to use to describe what we're doing to the homeowners. And basically, our water levels have been declining every year since we started this program because we're always removing a little more turf each time we do anything. Another thing that we did was we realized that our electrical lines that we had running underground for the trees and the shrubs, that was the time to renovate those at the same time. If you're going to be tearing up stuff, you're probably going to have lines and electrical lines are going to be damaged. So we used that opportunity and took a close look at the electrical, and what we found was we had 120 volt lines running to all the floods in our trees. A lot of times they're fluorescents and things of that sort, old technology, 25 years old. And if there was damage to one of those devices, it's 120 volts. It's standard plug-in, to your wall type electricity. You need to have a licensed electrician to fix it. You shouldn't be having your landscape guy going out there fixing lighting. It's really not copacetic. There could be some issues legally if you do that. They're not licensed to do that. So we thought, well, if we're going to be tearing out this area, we're going to put some new lights in. Why don't we bring in some low voltage lighting, put a transformer in, and now it's a much lower voltage. It's safe to work on, and we made that change at the same time. So not only did we go after the irrigation, we went after the lighting as well. We brought in LED lighting, floods for our trees. So our electrical bills are declining at the same time. And this was another strategy that 5 years ago hadn't been thought of. We kind of got together as a team and said, let's improve our irrigation system, let's reduce our water use, let's improve lower our electricity bills and put in better lighting. We took out some of the lighting that was on shrubs, we focused it on trees. We started putting one on each side of a tree. So if you're driving this way or you're walking this way, you've got nice lighting. It really does enhance the appearance of your facilities. At the same time, we were reducing costs in the long run. Yes, it costs more money to get the electrical done and to bring in the fixtures, but long term, it's much better for our cost structure. We also developed a way to do the landscape renovations. What we did was, we'd bring our crew in, we gave them spray cans of paint. We'd walk around to any shrub that needed to go, we'd put an X on it. We'd all walk around, we'd look, and what we thought was, while some of these areas are big enough you want to have a landscape architect, sometimes they're smaller areas, and our team's experienced enough, and we can work with our landscaper to figure out what we want to do. But you can't really conceptualize it when there's shrubs and trees and everything all over the place. The best thing to do is to identify the plants that have aged out, and it's time to remove them, so we go in and we spray them, okay? Then the crew comes in and they remove them. Then my team meets again. I'm talking about the committee members of our landscape committee. They meet again. Now it's barren, it's easy for us to figure out what we want. We then take flags, the little metal flags you see, and we'll say, we want a bougainvillea on the wall over here. And we'd write bougainvillea and we'd stick it in there. And we walk around the entire area and put a flag in where we want a shrub or a plant, and we'd identify it based on our experience. We'd have a plant palette with pictures and descriptions. Most of them know them by now, but I'd have new committee members. We'd give that to them, and they say, I like that plant. Can we put it over there? Sure we can. We'd set those flags in place, and then they'd tally up what's on each flag. We need 15 bougainvilleas, we need a bunch of agaves, we need this, we need that. Then they would deliver the plants, and a day or two later, my team would go again, and they would put them where the flags were. And we'd look at them and say, that really seemed good at the time, but we don't like it now. Or that plant's too small. We were looking for something a little bigger. And by the way, we don't go to larger plants per se. We found out if you take a nice 3-gallon or even smaller plant, it'll double or triple in the first year. A bigger plant, the roots are already kind of developed. It doesn't grow very fast. It might grow 10% the first year, and you're wasting a lot of money on a big plant. People do get upset. They see a small plant and they see some space around it. They get nervous about that. I say, come and see me next year and we'll talk about it. I never get those calls. They grow in, they look much better. So basically, we go back to that final time. We move the plants around, we add a couple of more, then they plant them. Then I go back and I count every one that's in the ground and I make sure it tallies up against the invoice that we were given, and we're done. We're done. But it takes 3 or 4 visits. We tried doing it various other ways that never worked very well. And again, that's kind of the process we used and we have been using. Any questions?
Do you do the landscape for all the individual homes, or do you do just the HOA?
Indian Ridge is kind of unique. Half the property is actually a traditional HOA where the homes, the landscaping is maintained by the association. The other half of the property is all individual homeowners, and their properties are managed individually, but any changes to their landscaping have to go through an architectural committee to be signed off. They cannot bring in a big tree and stick it in the middle of their small little area and without approvals to speak of. So that's kind of the way they manage it over there. It seems like there's a standard fee that we've seen redoing most areas, somewhere between $6 to $12 a square foot, and 12 is more like for artificial turf. So we kind of know how many square feet we've got to work with, and I kind of calculate that out and go to the board and say, well, I'm taking 100 feet, it's $600 to $1,000. This would be kind of what it's going to cost. And that doesn't include the lighting generally, which could be more. It depends how much you have, and there's some other issues. But we kind of have, they give me an annual budget, and they say, keep doing what you're doing. Keep removing the grass, selectively. Keep improving the appearances. And our committee's been doing this long enough now that they leave us alone. I require every committee member to inspect a section assigned to them once a month and write a brief report. So some people look at the pool areas, some people look at the outside vegetation outside the gates, some do it elsewhere, but every committee member is required to inspect one section assigned to them once a month. They're looking for sick plants, dead plants, they're looking for irrigation problems, things of that sort. And they write a very brief report. It's an email. We try to get together once a month and review these with the landscaping team. They come in, the landscape manager that works for our outside contractor is what I mean. And that's kind of how we manage this. So every month we've got about 8 or 9 members, 6 or 7 members now, I think it is, that will have an area assigned to them. And sometimes they walk with the landscaping people and look at their areas. Other times they ask me to come out. I have a little more experience with some of these problems than some of the newer committee members, and I'll go take a look at it. They'll recommend a few plants to be replaced that are sick, maybe an irrigation line that's not working properly or something of that sort. But the point is, I've got eyes on my landscaping. We're not just sitting in a room complaining as we drive by. They have to walk the areas and take a look at them. We found it to be very effective. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Scott, do you want to? So we have just a quick question that came up that we're going to discuss.
Yeah, and actually, do you mind if I bring you the mic to ask your question? Oh. It was an important question.
Here, all right, let's give this a shot.
Okay.
I'm a board member, and I'm repeating what I hear from my landscape committee regarding turf conversion. And they say we're nervous to do that. We're afraid to call CVWD because we might get more than we bargained for. I've learned otherwise today, I think. But what I've been told is, hey, I'm the treasurer also, by the way. Hey, Bob, if we convert turf, guess what's going to happen next? CVWD is going to adjust our water allocation, and they're going to take it some away from us because we've got less turf than we've had before. So we've got less water to water the property. And guess what that's going to do? It's going to push us into higher tiers. That's the question, or that's the dilemma we face as an HOA. It's like, and then I talk to other friends that have converted, and they say, yeah, Bob, that's absolutely right. We converted. We're not saving any money currently. The only thing we can do is it'll hopefully offset future water increases.
So thank you for that question. So we have our entire water management team here, and so our conservation team, and I'll look at Adam. I mean, I think the answer is we do not reduce budgets based on, areas of turf that's removed, but do we reduce budgets?
Oh, gosh. So, if you were listening earlier today when I was talking about water budgets, based on landscape area. So if you convert your landscape area from one thing to another, that's not reducing the landscape area overall. Now, I will say that in our budget, it's assuming that half of your landscape is turf and half of it is desert. What that means is if you have 100% turf, you're really going to struggle meeting the budget. But if you reduce some of that turf out, of course, that's going to be better for you. But you're not going to lose the square footage. Right, Renee?
Yes, and I checked with Renee before I answered. I'm not stupid. So the answer is we do not reduce the landscaped area in those situations. There could be, and correct me if I'm wrong, there could be circumstances, say your property is, in our system shows 200,000 square feet of landscaped area, and we go out there and we find, well, it's only 50,000 to begin with, then that could reduce it. But that's not tied to the turf replacement at all. That would be, we're going out and we find these things on a routine basis. I mean, we could have, I could be sitting in my office looking at something and find a mistake like that, or any one of us could be doing that on the water management team and have that corrected. So, but the turf removal and turf replacement with desert landscaping does not cause the budget decrease. You're here for me. You can have my card.
Do you actually come out to read the meters for the landscape?
So yeah, we have two systems. We have actual meter readers that go out, and you probably see them in your communities. They go out once a month and they read the meters. And we have about 18,000 meters of our 113,000 that are AMR meters, and those are drive-by systems that we use. And so those are primarily residential. There's some in like medians and places that might be unsafe to read. But we either go by, and those we try to get out to once a year to read and make sure they're accurate and functioning, and yeah.
But the actual landscape is.
Those are read every month. Yeah. And, we looked at we get this question all the time. We looked at, so there's technology out there, AMI, which would be, meter reads that we get every 15 minutes or every 24 hours. And it's great technology. Adam actually led a pilot project on this, looking at that technology. But it would cost about $40 million for our entire service area. And that implementation alone would increase rates. And they might last 10 years. Well, I won't comment on that, but I want my gas bill to go. But so there are technologies out there that we could use. No, there's actual. Yeah, we have a whole team that helps with that. And you had a question before about Cotino, and I know I was rushing off. Did I answer it? Okay, we can. Well, they'll get the water that they need, and I think that's going to be, I can't really speak to the actual project and the infrastructure, but I know at one point they were looking at their own recycling facilities to recycle water on premises. I don't know if that's still something they're looking at, but they're trying to be as efficient as possible. So I guess that's all I can. And they will comply with all the landscape ordinances and state laws that are in place for new developments. I hope that is. Yes?
Are there any plans to provide incentives for communities that are currently irrigated by well water?
So that's really a tough one. We've talked about it. We're trying to get funding for that. We can't use our domestic rates to fund private wells, and that's because it's a different fund and it's different structure. And so we're looking into federal funding, and we're kind of encouraging the federal government to provide, there's all this funding coming down through grants. And so we're doing what we can to get as much of that as we can for programs like that, not only for HOAs, but golf courses as well. And if we can put something together, then we would love to do that. Yes.
Well, so we spoke about the reservoirs and how the wet season has helped the situation. You didn't mention anything about the condition of the aquifer, and how is it measured, and where is it in its capacity percentage?
So I got to go now. So if I had known that question was going to come up, is Zoe here? Zoe is like our expert on this. You know, our aquifer, we have monitoring wells throughout the Coachella Valley that are obviously monitored, and those numbers are you know, we look at those numbers constantly, and so you know, between 2009 was kind of our aquifer was at a low, and part of that was all the development that had taken place, and there wasn't the development that had occurred was all turf, and it wasn't desert friendly. And after that, we implemented tiered rates. We took a number of actions, the landscape ordinance that we've talked about today, all of our rebate programs started, our turf removal. And so between 2009, and I might get the numbers a little wrong, so forgive me, but between 2009 and 2019, we put in 865,000 acre feet more into the aquifer than we removed. So, you know, I mentioned SIGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. That's a state law. We have to comply with that. And so we can't go below that 2009 level without some sort of state involvement that wouldn't be good, if I could. So where are we? I think we're pretty good. We're in good shape. Well, I don't know that I could speak to the capacity. I don't have the expertise to answer that particular question, but I know we're in good shape. We're recharging here in the Mid-Valley. Right behind our facility here, we have a recharge pond, and we're planning on expanding that facility. That and the Mid-Valley pipeline has really reduced groundwater pumping by golf courses and HOAs in the Mid-Valley. So that's actually, you know, preventing subsidence from occurring. And so that could have been an issue. That's not an issue right now, and that's monitored, I think, by the U.S. Geologic Survey. And so we're in good shape, but I can't tell you, give you how much capacity we have. Yeah.
We're above all thresholds. So there's different thresholds that are monitored. So the last engineer's report that Zoe just talked about yesterday.
Yeah.
Says we're above all of those, which is a good balance.
Sure. Anybody else before I turn it over to Lorraine? Okay, raffle time, I think.